I was 42 years old, standing in an empty house that suddenly felt like a tomb, when I realized I had no idea who I was anymore. My husband was gone, my children were gone, and the woman I used to be? She had disappeared somewhere along the way, buried under years of laundry, packed lunches, and silent sacrifices that no one would ever remember. But before I tell you about that moment, the moment that almost destroyed me, let me take you back. Because sometimes, to understand how far you've fallen, you need to remember where you started. I was 18 when I met Derek Matthews at a 4th of July barbecue in Cedar Falls, Iowa. He had sun-bleached hair and a smile that made my stomach flip. I remember the smell of grilled burgers mixing with the sweet scent of summer grass, the sound of fireworks crackling in the distance, and the way his hand felt when it brushed against mine as we both reached for the same bottle of Coke. 3 months later, I saw 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test in the bathroom of my parents' modest ranch house on Maple Street. I can still hear my father's voice echoing through our living room that October evening. The disappointment, the shame, the ultimatum delivered with the firmness of a judge's gavel. You'll get married, Sarah. That's what decent people do. I was 19 when I walked down the aisle of Sacred Heart Church, my white dress hiding a secret that was already 4 months along. My mother cried, but not from joy. Derek squeezed my hand during the vows, and I told myself that was love. That was enough. Wasn't it? Little Ethan came first, screaming his way into the world on a freezing February morning. 2 years later, Emma arrived during a spring thunderstorm, her first cry competing with the rumble of thunder outside the hospital window. I remember thinking, as I held her tiny, perfect body, that this was what I was meant for. This was my purpose. I threw myself into motherhood like a woman possessed. Every PTA meeting, every soccer practice, every school play. I was the mom who baked cupcakes from scratch at midnight, who sewed Halloween costumes by hand, who never missed a parent-teacher conference. Derek worked long hours at the manufacturing plant on the edge of town, coming home tired and distant, smelling of motor oil and exhaustion. Our conversations became transactional. Did you pay the electric bill? Ethan needs new cleats. The dishwasher is making that noise again. But I told myself that was normal. That was marriage. That was life. The years blurred together like watercolors in the rain. Birthdays, Christmases, graduations. I documented every moment with my camera, always behind the lens, never in the frame. I wonder now if that was symbolic, if I was already disappearing, even then. Ethan got a scholarship to a college in California. I remember standing in his almost empty bedroom, running my fingers over the posters he'd left behind, feeling the first crack in the foundation of the life I'd built. He was 21. I was 40. Emma met a boy online, someone from Austin, Texas. 6 months later, she was packing her bags, her eyes bright with the kind of hope I'd forgotten existed. "I love you, Mom," she said at the airport, hugging me tight, "but I need to live my own life." I smiled. I told her I understood. I waved until I couldn't see her anymore. And then I went home to Derek and the crushing silence of an empty nest. We didn't know what to do with each other. For 23 years, our children had been the bridge between us. Without them, we were 2 strangers sharing a house, circling each other like planets in different orbits. He started staying later at work. I started going to bed earlier. We stopped pretending. But I never imagined I would lose him completely. It was a Tuesday, October 15th, the kind of crisp autumn day that makes you believe the world is good. I was at the grocery store debating between 2 types of pasta sauce when my phone rang. Unknown number. "Mrs. Matthews? This is Officer Rodriguez with the Cedar Falls Police Department." The pasta sauce slipped from my hands. The jar shattered on the tile floor, red sauce spreading like blood, and I knew. Before he said another word, I knew. Truck accident on Highway 20. The other driver ran a red light. Instant. No suffering. They kept saying that last part, like it was supposed to comfort me. He didn't suffer, ma'am. It was instant. But I was the one suffering. I was the one whose life shattered like that jar of pasta sauce, impossible to put back together. The funeral was on a gray Saturday. Half the town showed up. They brought casseroles and sympathy cards and hollow words that meant nothing. He's in a better place. God has a plan. Time heals all wounds. I wanted to scream at them. To tell them that God's plan had left me alone at 42, with no husband, no children in the house, and no idea how to exist in the world by myself. But I just smiled, thanked them, accepted their casseroles. And then I went home and locked the door. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. I stopped answering the phone, stopped checking the mail, stopped caring whether the sun rose or set. I existed in a twilight world of grief and regret, haunted by all the things I'd never said, all the ways I'd let myself disappear. I'd lived for everyone else, been the perfect daughter, the dutiful wife, the devoted mother. But who was Sarah? What did she want? What did she dream about? I didn't know. And that terrified me more than the loneliness. My sister, Rachel, was the only one who wouldn't give up. She'd call every day, leave voicemails that I wouldn't return. She'd show up at my door with groceries I wouldn't eat. She'd sit outside my house in her car just so I'd know someone cared. Rachel had always been different from me. While I'd rushed into marriage and motherhood, she'd found something else to fill her life. Faith, community, purpose. She attended Riverside Community Church 3 times a week, volunteered at the homeless shelter, led a women's Bible study group. I'd always thought she was wasting her time. Now I envied her certainty. "Sarah, please," she said through my front door one Sunday morning in late spring. "Just come with me. One service. If you hate it, I'll never ask again." I almost said no. Almost sent her away like I'd sent everyone else away. But something in her voice, some note of desperate love, broke through my fog. I opened the door. She drove me to Riverside Community Church in her old Honda, talking the whole way about nothing important. The weather, the new coffee shop downtown, her neighbor's cat. I think she was afraid that if she stopped talking, I'd ask her to turn around. The church was smaller than I expected. Nothing like the grand cathedral where I'd married Derek. This was a converted warehouse on the edge of town, with exposed brick walls and strings of lights hanging from the rafters. It looked more like a trendy coffee shop than a house of worship. People greeted us at the door. Too friendly, too happy. I wanted to run. But Rachel held my arm, guided me to a seat near the back, and stayed close. The service started with music, loud music, the kind that vibrates in your chest. People were standing, hands raised, singing like they meant every word. I stood because everyone else was standing, but I didn't sing. I couldn't. Then the music stopped, and Pastor James Mackenzie walked onto the stage. He was younger than I expected, maybe 50, wearing jeans and a button-down shirt. He looked like someone's dad, not a spiritual leader. "How many of you are tired?" he asked the congregation. And I don't mean the kind of tired that a good night's sleep can fix. I mean soul tired, bone tired, the kind of exhaustion that makes you wonder if you can take one more step. I felt my chest tighten. Maybe you've been carrying burdens that were never meant for you to carry. Maybe you've been trying to be everything to everyone, and you've forgotten that you're allowed to rest. Maybe you've lost something or someone, and you don't know how to keep going. Tears were burning behind my eyes. Pastor James opened his Bible. Jesus said something that I want you to really hear today. He said, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." My breath caught. Not try harder, not be stronger, not figure it out yourself. He said, "Come, bring your exhaustion, bring your pain, bring your broken heart, and I will give you rest." The tears came then, silent at first, then building into sobs that I couldn't control. 24 years of holding everything together came pouring out of me in that converted warehouse church, and I couldn't stop it. Rachel wrapped her arms around me, held me while I shook, and for the first time since Derek passed away, since my children left, since I lost myself in the life I'd built for everyone else, I felt something other than emptiness. I felt hope. After the service, I couldn't move. People filed out around us, but I sat frozen in my seat, Rachel's hand in mine, staring at the empty stage where Pastor James had stood. "Do you want to talk to someone?" Rachel asked softly. I nodded. She led me to a small room off the main sanctuary. Pastor James was there, along with a woman named Patricia who led the prayer team. They didn't push, didn't preach. They just listened as I told them everything. The early marriage, the lost years, the children leaving, Derek's passing, the darkness that had swallowed me whole. "I don't know how to be happy," I finally whispered. "I don't even know how to be me." Pastor James leaned forward, his eyes kind. "Then maybe it's time to discover who that is. Not Sarah the wife, not Sarah the mother, just Sarah, the woman God created with purpose and value and worth that has nothing to do with anyone else." "But I'm 42, I said. "I've wasted so much time." Patricia smiled. "Sarah, your story isn't over. This isn't an ending. It's a beginning. I wanted to believe her. Desperately. They prayed with me. Simple words. Honest words. And when Patricia asked if I wanted to surrender my pain to Jesus, to accept his love and grace, I said yes. Not because I understood everything. Not because all my questions were answered, but because I was tired of carrying everything alone. I left that church different than I'd arrived. The grief was still there. The loss was still real. But something else had taken root in my heart. Something small but growing. Purpose. The weeks that followed were strange. Not easy, but strange. I started waking up with a reason to get out of bed. Small things at first. Opening the curtains, making coffee, taking a shower. Tasks that had seemed impossible in the fog of my depression suddenly became achievable. Rachel called me every morning at 7. Not to check on me, she said, but because she wanted to pray with me over the phone before she went to work. At first, I just listened. Her words felt foreign, like a language I'd never learned. But gradually, something shifted. The words started to sound less like noise and more like lifelines. I went back to Riverside Community Church the next Sunday, and the Sunday after that. Each time, I sat a little closer to the front. Each time, I sang a little louder. Each time, I felt a little more like I was waking up from a long, dark sleep. Pastor James was preaching a series on identity. "Who does God say you are?" he asked one Sunday in June, the summer heat making the old warehouse church feel alive and humid. Not who does your job say you are. Not who does your family say you are. Not even who your past says you are. Who does God say you are? I scribbled notes in the margins of the bulletin they'd handed me at the door. Beloved, chosen, forgiven, purposeful, words I'd never applied to myself. After the service, a woman approached me. She was maybe 60, with silver hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and laugh lines around her eyes that suggested she smiled more than she frowned. "I'm Margaret," she said, extending her hand. "I've seen you here the past few weeks. I just wanted to say welcome." "Sarah," I replied, shaking her hand. Her grip was firm, confident. "I run a ministry here at the church," Margaret continued. "We work with kids in the community, tutoring, mentoring, after-school programs. We're always looking for volunteers, if you're interested." I opened my mouth to say no, to explain that I wasn't ready, that I was still figuring out my own life, that I had nothing to offer. But different words came out. "Tell me more." Margaret's face lit up. She explained how the church had partnered with Lincoln Elementary, a school on the south side of Cedar Falls where most of the kids came from low-income families. Many had parents working multiple jobs. Many came to school hungry. Many fell behind because there was no one at home to help with homework or read them bedtime stories. "We're trying to fill that gap," Margaret said. "Even just an hour a week can change a child's life." I thought about Ethan and Emma, how I'd poured everything into them, how I'd read to them every night, helped with every project, showed up for every moment. Maybe that experience, those years I'd thought were wasted, could actually mean something. "I'll do it," I heard myself say. Margaret hugged me. A real hug, the kind that feels like coming home. The following Tuesday, I walked into Lincoln Elementary for the first time. The building was old, with scuffed linoleum floors and the lingering smell of cafeteria food and childhood. Bulletin boards displayed student artwork, bright and hopeful against the dingy walls. Margaret introduced me to the principal, Mrs. Chen, and then to the children. There were 8 of them in the after-school program that day. 3rd and 4th graders with gap-toothed smiles and 2 big backpacks. They looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. "This is Miss Sarah," Margaret said. "She's going to be helping us." A little girl with dark braids and enormous brown eyes raised her hand. "Are you a teacher?" "No," I said, kneeling down to her level. "But I'm a mom, and I'm pretty good at helping with homework and listening to stories." Her face broke into a smile. "I like stories." "Me too," I said. "What's your name?" "Jasmine." Over the next hour, I helped Jasmine with her math homework, listened to a boy named Marcus read haltingly from a chapter book, and refereed a dispute between 2 girls over markers. It was chaotic and exhausting and absolutely wonderful. I drove home that day with my heart fuller than it had been in months, maybe years. The volunteer work became the center of my week. Tuesdays and Thursdays at Lincoln Elementary. By August, I was there 4 days a week. The kids started calling me Miss Sarah, running to hug me when I arrived, saving seats for me at the craft table. Jasmine, in particular, attached herself to me. She was 9 years old, being raised by her grandmother while her mother worked 2 jobs to make ends meet. She was smart and funny and desperately hungry for attention. "Miss Sarah, will you come to my birthday party?" she asked one September afternoon, her eyes hopeful. "When is it?" I asked. "Next Saturday. We're having cake, and my grandma says I can invite 5 people, and you're one of my 5. My throat tightened. I would be honored. I went to that birthday party in a modest apartment that smelled like vanilla cake and struggled finances. But Jasmine's joy was radiant. She introduced me to her grandmother, her cousins, her best friend from school. "This is Miss Sarah," she said proudly. "She's my special person." Driving home that day, I realized something profound. I'd spent 23 years being a mother to 2 children. But maybe God was calling me to be a spiritual mother to many. Not to replace what I'd lost, but to transform it into something new. The months rolled by. Fall turned to winter. I celebrated my 43rd birthday surrounded by my church community, including 8 rowdy elementary school kids who'd made me cards decorated with glitter and misspelled words. I was healing. Not because the pain was gone, but because I'd found purpose in it. Then, on a Tuesday in late January, everything shifted again. I was setting up for the after-school program when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Sarah Mitchell? Is that really you?" I turned around and felt my heart stop. Tom Anderson stood in the doorway of the elementary school classroom, looking almost exactly like he had 26 years ago, just with silver threading through his dark hair and smile lines around his blue eyes. Tom, my first crush, my childhood friend, the boy who'd held my hand in 5th grade and told me I was pretty, the boy I'd thought about sometimes, late at night, when Derek was snoring beside me and I wondered what other versions of my life might have looked like. "Tom?" I managed to say. "What are you doing here?" "I volunteer with the reading program," he said, walking into the room. "Started a few months ago. Margaret mentioned a new volunteer named Sarah, but I never imagined—" He trailed off, looking at me like I was a ghost. "It's been a long time," I said, my voice unsteady. 26 years, he said, "since graduation." We stood there, 2 middle-aged people suddenly feeling like awkward teenagers again. "I heard about Derek," Tom said quietly. "I'm so sorry." "Thank you. That was, it's been over a year now. And you're here, working with kids?" I nodded. "And you?" He smiled. "Divorced 3 years ago. Kids are grown. I was looking for something to do with my time that actually mattered, you know?" I knew exactly what he meant. Over the next weeks, Tom and I kept running into each other. At the school, at church, at the coffee shop downtown where the volunteers sometimes met to plan activities. We talked, really talked, about our lives, our regrets, our hopes, about the people we'd been and the people we were becoming. He told me about his marriage that had slowly died from neglect and mismatched dreams, about his daughter in Denver and his son in Chicago, about how he'd spent 2 years after his divorce feeling lost, until his sister convinced him to come back to church. "Riverside?" I asked. "Riverside," he confirmed. "Best decision I ever made." I told him about my journey, the depression, the darkness, the moment in that church when Pastor James's words had pulled me back from the edge. "You're different than I remember," Tom said one afternoon in March. We were having coffee after volunteering, sitting in a booth at Maggie's Diner where we'd hung out as teenagers. "Different how?" I asked. "Sadder," he said honestly, "but also more alive." Does that make sense? It did. Perfect sense. "I think I had to break completely," I said slowly, "to discover who I actually was, not who everyone needed me to be." Tom reached across the table and took my hand. "I think you're pretty incredible, Sarah Mitchell." My breath caught. It's Matthews now. Or it was. I don't know. Do I go back to my maiden name? I've been thinking about that. "Be whoever you want to be," Tom said, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "That's the beautiful thing about second chances. You get to choose." We started seeing each other intentionally after that. Nothing rushed, nothing forced. Just 2 broken people who'd found healing in the same place, discovering that maybe their stories weren't over after all. He took me to dinner at an Italian restaurant downtown. We went to the movies like teenagers, sharing popcorn in the back row. He came to Jasmine's school play where she played a flower in the spring production, and cheered louder than anyone when she took her bow. Rachel was thrilled. "I always thought you 2 would end up together," she said one day when I told her Tom and I were officially dating. "We were 12, I protested. Some things are meant to be, she said with that knowing smile that had always irritated me but now felt comforting. By summer, Tom and I were inseparable. He integrated seamlessly into my volunteer work, bringing his own gifts to the kids who needed us. He could fix anything, so he started a workshop teaching basic home repairs to the older students. He could make anyone laugh, so the children adored him. And he could make me feel seen in a way I'd never experienced before. "I love you," he said one evening in July. We were sitting on my porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky pink and gold, and his words were so simple, so honest, that they took my breath away. "I love you too," I whispered back. We were married in September, 1 year after we'd reconnected. It was a small ceremony at Riverside Community Church, with Pastor James officiating and our closest friends and family in attendance. Jasmine was my flower girl, taking her role very seriously in a purple dress she'd picked out herself. Ethan flew in from California. Emma drove up from Texas with her boyfriend, now fiancé. They hugged Tom, welcomed him into the family with an ease that made me cry. This was different than my first wedding. I wasn't scared, wasn't pressured, wasn't disappearing. I was choosing, fully, completely, joyfully. Our honeymoon was a week in the Smoky Mountains, staying in a cabin with a view that seemed to stretch forever. We hiked, talked, made plans for the future. "What do you want?" Tom asked me one night as we sat on the cabin's deck, wrapped in blankets against the cool mountain air. "What do you mean?" "For your life, your dreams. You've spent so long living for everyone else. What does Sarah want?" I thought about it, really thought about it. "I want to expand the volunteer program," I said. "I want to reach more kids. Maybe start a weekend program too. I want to write grants, raise money, make a real difference." Tom smiled. "Then let's do it. And I want to keep discovering who God created me to be. Keep growing. Keep healing. We'll do that together," he said, kissing my forehead. Life settled into a new rhythm. Tom moved into my house on Maple Street, bringing his furniture and his laughter and his steady presence. We attended church together every Sunday, served together every week, built a life that felt purposeful and whole. I turned 44 in October. The kids from Lincoln Elementary threw me a surprise party at the school. Jasmine had made me a card that said, "You're the best Miss Sarah in the whole world," with a backwards R and a heart dotted with glitter. 2 weeks later, I felt sick. At first, I thought it was just stress. Tom and I had been working on a proposal to expand the volunteer program, and I'd been putting in long hours. But when the nausea persisted, when I felt exhausted in a way that seemed familiar, Rachel said something that made my blood run cold. "Sarah, when was your last cycle?" I couldn't remember. "You need to take a test," Rachel said. "I'm 44, I protested. "That's impossible. Take a test." I bought 3 different brands at the pharmacy, feeling ridiculous. Women my age didn't get pregnant, especially not when they'd been done with that chapter of their lives for over 20 years. But every single test showed 2 pink lines. I sat on my bathroom floor, staring at the evidence in my shaking hands, and laughed, then cried, then laughed again. Tom found me there 20 minutes later. "Sarah? What's wrong?" I held up the tests. "We're having a baby." His face went through about 7 different expressions in 3 seconds. Shock, disbelief, wonder, joy. "Are you serious?" As a heart attack. He pulled me into his arms and held me while we both cried and laughed and tried to process this impossible, miraculous, terrifying news. We told our families at Thanksgiving. Ethan looked stunned. Emma looked like she might pass out. "Mom," Emma finally said, "I have something to tell you too." My heart dropped. "What?" "I'm pregnant too." 3 months. The room erupted. Everyone talking at once. Rachel crying, Tom laughing, Ethan looking confused. "Wait," I said. "You're 3 months along?" Emma nodded. "I'm 2 months." We stared at each other, and then burst into simultaneous laughter. "We're going to have babies at the same time?" Emma said. "Apparently. This is insane. Completely insane. But it was also perfect. Somehow. Impossibly perfect. Emma's fiancé, David, had gotten a job opportunity in Chicago. They'd been planning to move in the new year, but with the baby coming, Emma looked overwhelmed. "Actually," she said carefully, "David's job doesn't start until April. I was wondering, could I maybe come stay with you, Mom? Just until the baby is born? I know it's a lot to ask, but..." "Yes," I said immediately. "Yes, absolutely yes." Tom nodded enthusiastically. We'd love to have you. So Emma and David moved into our guest room in December, and our quiet house became full again. Full of life, full of laughter, full of hope. The winter months were unlike anything I'd experienced before. Emma and I, both pregnant, both navigating morning sickness and exhaustion, and the strange miracle of creating life. We became closer than we'd ever been when she was growing up. Maybe because now we were meeting as equals. Not mother and child, but two women sharing an extraordinary journey. We'd sit together on the couch in the evenings, hands on our growing bellies, feeling our babies kick. Tom would bring us ginger tea and crackers, shaking his head with wonder at the scene. 2 babies, he'd say, in the same house, at the same time. You signed up for this, I'd tease him. Best decision I ever made, he'd reply, and I'd know he meant it. But it wasn't just the pregnancy that was transforming our home. It was Emma's heart. She'd been distant from faith for years. Casual about it, the way young people often are when they're building their own lives. She'd grown up going to church with Derek and me, but it had been routine, not relationship. She'd drifted away in college, and I'd watched it happen with quiet sadness but never pushed. Now, living with Tom and me, seeing our daily rhythms of prayer and service, something was shifting in her. One Sunday in January, she asked if she could come to church with us. Of course, I said, trying to keep the joy out of my voice. Always. She sat between Tom and me during the service, her hand resting on her rounded belly. Pastor James was preaching about new beginnings, about how God specializes in writing beautiful stories from broken chapters. I saw tears running down Emma's face during worship. After the service, she turned to me. Mom, can I talk to someone? Like you did? My heart nearly burst. Absolutely, honey. We found Pastor James and Patricia, and I watched my daughter pour out her heart the way I had 18 months earlier. Watched her confess her fears about becoming a mother, her doubts about whether she was capable, her questions about faith and purpose and meaning, and I watched her surrender it all to Jesus. We cried together in that small prayer room, mother and daughter, both pregnant, both finding healing in the same place. I don't know why I waited so long, Emma said through her tears. I feel like I've been carrying everything alone, and I didn't have to. I hugged her tight. Now you never have to again. David, Emma's fiancé, noticed the change in her immediately. At first, he was skeptical. He'd grown up without religion, didn't understand it, didn't see the point. But he loved Emma, and he wanted to understand what was bringing her so much peace. Can I ask you something? He said to me one evening. Emma had gone to bed early, exhausted from the pregnancy, and David and I were cleaning up the dinner dishes. Of course, I said. This faith thing, this church thing, is it real? Or is it just, I don't know, something people tell themselves to feel better? I dried my hands on a dish towel, choosing my words carefully. For me, it's the most real thing in my life, more real than what I can see or touch. But I can't make you believe that, David. That's something you have to discover for yourself. How did you discover it? He asked. So I told him, the whole story, the depression, the darkness, the moment when I thought I couldn't go on, and the grace that met me there. I was 42 years old and I thought my life was over, I said. But God was just getting started. He took everything broken and made it beautiful. Not because I deserved it, not because I earned it, just because he loves me. David was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I'd like to come to church with you guys, if that's okay. It's more than okay, I said. The next Sunday, all 4 of us went to Riverside Community Church. Tom and I watched David experiencing worship for the first time, seeing his confusion gradually transform into curiosity, then into something that looked like wonder. He started asking questions, big questions, hard questions. Pastor James met with him weekly, never pushing, always patient. And slowly, beautifully, we watched David's heart open. By March, both he and Emma had made their faith their own, not because of pressure or expectation, but because they'd encountered something real. I get it now, David said to me one day. I understand why Emma changed, why you're different. This isn't about religion, it's about relationship. Exactly, I said, tears in my eyes. My volunteer work at Lincoln Elementary continued throughout my pregnancy. The kids were fascinated by my growing belly, asking questions about the baby, placing their small hands on my stomach to feel the kicks. Jasmine was especially excited. Miss Sarah, when your baby comes, Can I help take care of her? How do you know it's a her? I asked, smiling. I just know, she said with the confidence of a 9-year-old sage. She was right. Tom and I found out in February that we were having a girl. Emma was having a boy. A grandson and a daughter, I said to Tom that night, lying in bed with his hand on my belly, both arriving within weeks of each other. Your life has gotten wonderfully complicated, Mrs. Anderson, he said. The best kind of complicated, I agreed. April arrived with spring flowers and growing anticipation. Emma was due first in mid-April. I was due in early May. We'd both chosen the same hospital, the same doctor. Dr. Patel thought the whole situation was delightful. In 20 years of practice, I've never had a mother and daughter pregnant at the same time, she said during one of our joint appointments. This is going to be a story you tell forever. Emma went into labor on April 18th, 2 days before her due date. I was with her in the delivery room, holding her hand, coaching her through contractions the way she'd probably heard me coached 25 years earlier when she was the one being born. I can't do this, she gasped at one point, her face red with effort and pain. Yes, you can, I said firmly. You're strong. You're capable. You're doing it right now. David was on her other side, looking pale but determined. Tom waited in the lobby with Ethan, who'd flown in from California to meet his nephew. At 3:47 in the morning, Emma brought her son into the world. Noah David Miller. 7 pounds, 6 ounces. Perfect. I held my grandson for the first time as the sun rose over Cedar Falls, casting golden light through the hospital window, and felt the circle of life complete and begin again simultaneously. Hi, Noah, I whispered to him. I'm your grandma, and I'm going to love you forever. Emma watched me with exhausted, joyful eyes. Thanks for being here, Mom. Nowhere else I'd rather be, I said. 2.5 weeks later, on May 6th, my water broke while I was making breakfast. Tom went into controlled panic mode, grabbing the hospital bag we'd packed weeks ago, helping me to the car, driving exactly the speed limit while I laughed through contractions. This is surreal, I said. I'm 44 years old, about to have a baby. You're amazing, Tom said. Have I told you that lately? Tell me again when I'm not in labor, I said through gritted teeth. The delivery was harder than I remembered. Older bodies don't bounce back the same way young ones do. But when I heard that first cry, when they placed my daughter on my chest, every moment of pain evaporated. Grace Elizabeth Anderson. 6 pounds, 11 ounces. Perfect. Hi, sweet girl, I whispered. I'm your mama, and you're my miracle, Tom cried, actual tears streaming down his face as he looked at our daughter. She's beautiful, Sarah, just like her mother. Emma brought Noah to visit the next day, my daughter holding her son while I held my daughter. 2 generations of new life. 2 miracles in one family. They're going to grow up together, Emma said softly, looking from Noah to Grace, like siblings instead of uncle and niece. Cousins, I corrected. But you're right. They'll have a special bond. Rachel came to visit, of course, armed with balloons and prayers and that knowing smile. Only God, she kept saying. Only God could write a story like this. She was right. The weeks that followed were exhausting and beautiful. Sleepless nights and endless feedings. Emma and I trading baby duty, helping each other, navigating new motherhood together despite our 25-year age gap. David officially proposed to Emma in June, with Noah in his arms and all of us watching. They set a date for August, wanting to get married before they moved to Chicago for David's job. Will you be my matron of honor? Emma asked me. I know that's weird since you're my mom, but you're also my best friend now. And I want you standing beside me. I'd be honored, I said, crying. Again. I cried so much those days. Happy tears, grateful tears, overwhelmed tears. The wedding was beautiful, simple and elegant at Riverside Community Church, with Noah as the youngest guest and Grace as the sleepiest. Pastor James officiated, speaking about covenant and commitment and the grace of second chances. Emma glowed. Not just from the pregnancy aftermath or the beautiful dress, but from the inside out. She'd found herself, found her faith, found her purpose. Thank you, she whispered to me before walking down the aisle, for showing me what real faith looks like, for teaching me that it's never too late to start over. You taught me that too, I whispered back. We learned together. They moved to Chicago in September. It was hard saying goodbye, watching them pack up their little family and drive away. But it was different than when she'd left the first time. Then, I'd felt like I was losing her. Now, I knew I was setting her free, and we'd video chat 3 times a week, watching Noah and Grace grow up together through screens and occasional visits. Life settled into a new normal. Tom and I with baby Grace, our volunteer work at Lincoln Elementary, which I'd returned to part-time once Grace was 3 months old. Jasmine, now 10, became Grace's unofficial big sister, always wanting to hold her, always asking if she could help. "When I grow up," Jasmine told me one day, "I want to help kids like you help us, and I want to be a mom like you." I hugged her tight. "You're going to be amazing at both." One Sunday in November, Pastor James asked me to share my testimony with the church. My story. My journey from darkness to light. I almost said no. Speaking in front of hundreds of people terrified me. But Tom encouraged me. Emma encouraged me via video call. Rachel practically pushed me onto that stage. So I stood there, under the lights of the converted warehouse church, holding the microphone with shaking hands, and told them everything. I told them about being 18 and pregnant and scared, about building a life for everyone else and losing myself in the process, about the moment Derek passed away and the darkness that followed, about wanting to give up, and I told them about the moment Pastor James's words broke through my fog, about the grace that met me in my brokenness, about discovering that God wasn't finished with my story. "I thought my life was over at 42, I said, my voice stronger now. "I thought I'd wasted my best years. I thought it was too late for joy, too late for purpose, too late for love." I looked at Tom, holding Grace in the front row, at Rachel, crying and smiling simultaneously, at the faces of the congregation, many of them nodding with recognition. But God doesn't work on our timeline. He doesn't look at our age or our mistakes or our circumstances and say, "Too late." He looks at our surrendered hearts and says, "Now we can begin." I told them about the volunteer work, about Jasmine and Marcus and all the children who taught me that purpose doesn't end when your own kids grow up, about Tom and our second chance love story, about Emma's transformation and the miracle of grace. "I'm 45 years old," I said. "I have a 1-year-old daughter, a grandson, and a life that looks nothing like I planned. And it's better. It's so much better than anything I could have imagined." My voice cracked with emotion. If you're sitting here today thinking it's too late for you, I want you to hear me. It's not. If you're thinking you've wasted too much time, made too many mistakes, missed too many opportunities, I want you to know something. God specializes in redemption. He takes our broken pieces and creates something beautiful. I paused, looking around the room. But you have to surrender. You have to stop trying to carry everything alone. You have to come to Him, just as you are, and say, "I need help. I need grace. I need a fresh start." That's what I did, in this very room, 3 years ago, and He met me there. He'll meet you too. The response was overwhelming. After the service, person after person came up to me, sharing their own stories of loss and redemption, of second chances and new beginnings, of feeling like it was too late until they discovered it wasn't. An older woman, maybe 70, hugged me with tears streaming down her face. "I lost my husband 5 years ago," she said. "I've been just existing since then, but you've given me hope that maybe my story isn't over either." "It's not," I told her firmly. "It's absolutely not." That night, putting Grace to bed, I reflected on how far I'd come. 3 years ago, I couldn't get out of bed, couldn't see a reason to keep going, couldn't imagine feeling joy again. Now, I was singing lullabies to my miracle baby while my husband cleaned up the kitchen downstairs. I had meaningful work that made a difference in children's lives. I had a daughter who'd found faith and was building a beautiful family. I had a community that felt like home. I wasn't the same Sarah who'd married at 19. I wasn't the same Sarah who'd buried her husband at 42. I wasn't even the same Sarah who'd walked into Riverside Community Church 3 years ago, broken and desperate. I was new, redeemed, purposeful. Grace fell asleep in my arms, her tiny chest rising and falling with peaceful breaths. I kissed her forehead and whispered a prayer of gratitude. "Thank you," I said to God. "Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for meeting me in the darkness. Thank you for showing me that it's never too late for a new beginning." As I laid Grace in her crib and walked downstairs to where Tom waited with tea and a smile, I thought about all the people who might hear my story, all the people who might be sitting in their own darkness right now, thinking it's too late. And I wanted them to know, it's not. Your age doesn't disqualify you. Your past doesn't define you. Your mistakes don't limit God's ability to redeem your story. If you're tired, He offers rest. If you're broken, He offers healing. If you're lost, He offers direction. If you think your best days are behind you, He offers proof that they're not. But you have to take that first step. You have to open the door when someone knocks. You have to say yes when grace offers you a second chance. I almost didn't. I almost stayed in my darkness, locked in my grief, convinced that my story had ended. Thank God I didn't. Thank God for sisters who won't give up on you, for churches that welcome the broken, for pastors who preach hope, for communities that embrace the hurting, for children who teach you that love multiplies instead of divides, for second chance love that shows you it's never too late. Thank God for grace. My life isn't perfect now. I still have hard days. Grace keeps me up at night. I worry about Emma and Noah in Chicago. I miss Derek sometimes, miss who I was when life was simpler, even if it wasn't better. But I'm not drowning anymore. I'm not disappearing. I'm not lost. I'm found. I'm purposeful. I'm loved. And if I can find that at 45, after everything I've been through, then anyone can. That's the message I want to leave you with today. Not that life will be easy. Not that faith will solve all your problems. Not that everything will work out perfectly, but that you matter. That your story isn't over. That there's purpose waiting for you, even in the pain. That God can take your darkest chapters and write something beautiful. You just have to let Him. So if you're watching this today and you're struggling, I want you to do something for me. I want you to pray this simple prayer. God, I'm tired of carrying everything alone. I'm tired of pretending I'm okay when I'm not. I'm surrendering my pain, my past, my fear of the future. Meet me here. Show me that it's not too late. Give me hope. Give me purpose. Give me a reason to keep going. I'm saying yes to whatever you have for me. Amen? That's it. That's the prayer that changed everything for me. Not because the words were magic, but because I finally stopped trying to do it all myself. And I believe, with everything in me, that if you pray that prayer with an honest heart, God will meet you there. Just like He met me. Your story isn't over. It's just beginning. The end.